Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the big news. Over the last few days, Manipur has been burning with large-scale violence, and the government has even issued shoot-at-sight orders. In this context, it becomes very important to examine this topic in complete detail, as the topic is very relevant for UPSC exams, especially under GS Paper 3 for internal security. So in this short and brief session, let's understand the context, the entire background to this dispute and this crisis in Manipur, and let's also examine the implications. So in Manipur, violent ethnic clashes have been reported between the Meiteis and the tribal groups such as Nagas and Kukis. If you have to understand why this violence has erupted, we need to trace the background and history of Manipur. But in the last few days, the large-scale ethnic clashes that have been reported has led to a number of deaths and injuries. The government has responded by deploying the Indian Army, Assam Rifles, and even the Rapid Action Force of the CRPF have been deployed to deal with the clashes and the violence. The state government has been coordinating with the central government, that is the Ministry of Home Affairs, to contain the situation as soon as possible, because any such destabilization in the northeast of India could have very dangerous consequences. Under the AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, shoot-at-sight orders have also been issued under exceptional circumstances. If the violence cannot be contained with any other method, the forces have been empowered with shoot-at-sight orders, and the district magistrates have been called upon by the state government to issue these orders. So this large-scale violence that you are witnessing in Manipur represents the ethnic fault lines that run quite deep in Manipur, and these have reopened with the fresh clashes that have broken out. So to understand the topic in detail, we have to look at the background. We need to understand Manipur's ethnic divide. We should speak about the unique geography and demography of Manipur, how this plays a role in the socio-ethnic tensions that are witnessed in the state. And we should also see this in the context of the insurgency in Manipur. I hope you know that, just like any other northeastern state, Manipur also has been deeply affected by insurgency, especially from 1960s to 1990s. During these 3 decades, Manipur has witnessed large-scale insurgency led by various insurgent groups. And the insurgency seen in Manipur is a direct result of the ethnic divide in the society of Manipur. So that's the reason why it becomes very important to understand the demography of Manipur and also see the role of geography of Manipur in instigating these ethnic clashes. Now, if you look at the map, you will notice that Manipur is an important northeastern state, one of the 7 sister states. It's also a border state sharing international boundaries with Myanmar over here. And it shares borders with other Indian states such as Nagaland, Assam, and Mizoram. So geopolitically as well, Manipur occupies a strategic location. This international border with Myanmar is very crucial. We have many border security threats present along this border because northeast insurgents, they have freely exploited this border to move across the border, to infiltrate across the border. They have easily procured arms and weapons, and even they engage in drug smuggling and drug trafficking, which fuels the insurgency. And hence, this international border is a very sensitive, delicate border for India. Along with that, there are deep socio-ethnic tensions in Manipur, which is directly linked with the insurgency that the state has witnessed. And it's also linked with the current clashes and violence that you're witnessing. Now, if you look at the geography of Manipur, you have Imphal over here, right in the middle. The Imphal Valley, right over here in the middle. And it is surrounded by these hill districts, such as Senapati, Tamangleng, Churachandpur, Chandel, Ukhrul, and the others. All these are the hill districts of Manipur, the hill tribal areas. And right in the middle, you have the valley region, the Imphal Valley region. Other than this, the important point to note is that Manipur is a multi-ethnic state where multiple ethnic groups and tribal groups can be found. Now, if you look at the political history of Manipur, before it merged with India in 1949, Manipur was an independent kingdom. It was a kingdom ruled by the Meitei kings, the Meitei rulers, the dominant class of Manipur, who were in majority as well, they were ruling the princely state, and it remained independent until 1891. But later, the Meitei rulers were defeated by the British, and the British were smart enough not to annex the kingdom. Given the complexities in Northeast India, the social and cultural complexities, the British didn't try to annex the region. Instead, they just ensured that Manipur remains loyal to the British government, remains under British protection, while ensuring that the British would have access to the precious forest resources of Manipur. This was the trade-off that was worked out between British India and the then Meitei kingdom of Manipur. The British would have access to the resources, the region would remain loyal to British India, whereas the Meitei rulers would enjoy their perceived sense of autonomy. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that throughout history, the Meitei rulers have had a sense of autonomy and independence. In 1947, when India became independent, Manipur, just like most other parts of Northeast India, was forced to merge with the Indian Union. So as Manipur merged with the Indian Union in 1949, this princely state felt that its autonomy had been snatched away, its independence had been taken away. So the Meiteis, they felt that their independence, autonomy had been lost. But however, this alone was not the root cause for insurgency and violence and clashes in Manipur. The violence and insurgency that Manipur has gone through, beginning from 1960s, is actually linked to the ethnic divide in Manipur society. Even though there was some degree of frustration amongst the Meiteis about the way in which the princely state was merged with India, this was not the root cause for insurgency and violence. It is the ethnic divide between the dominant Meiteis and the other tribal groups, which is the root cause for violence and as well as insurgency in Manipur. To tackle this insurgency, which had broken out by 1960s, the government of India made a lot of concessions as well. As part of these concessions, Manipur was given full statehood. It was turned into a full-fledged state in 1972. So this is essentially the political history of Manipur. Now, let me help you understand the demography, the ethnic profile, by taking a look at the geography of Manipur. This understanding is very, very important if you need to understand the current clashes and as well as the insurgency that Manipur has gone through. You're looking at the ethnic profile of Manipur over here in this map. Now, if you imagine Manipur as a football stadium, then Imphal, the Imphal Valley, is like the play field where the actual match would take place. The galleries around it would be the hill regions, which are dominated by the tribal communities. In fact, many experts, they equate the geography of Manipur with a football stadium because it looks like that. In the middle over here, you have the Imphal Valley, the valley districts. It's like the center field of a football stadium where the actual match would take place. And it's surrounded by these rising galleries or these hill districts that rise around the Imphal Valley. So all the districts you see here, Senapati, Ukhrul, Chandel, and the others, they're all the hill districts where you find the tribal communities. Now let me explain the ethnic profile here. See, in the Imphal Valley, which accounts for just 10% of Manipur's land area, the majority Meitei community can be found. The Meiteis account for 64% of the state's population. The Meiteis, who are part of the royal family, they are the dominant class here. In terms of their size, that is population size, they are the majority group. Before they merged with India, the Meiteis perceived themselves as a tribe under British India. But after merger with India, the tribe status was not recognized for Meiteis. As Meiteis were dominant, they were in majority, right? Post merger with India, Meiteis lost the status of a scheduled tribe, which they perceived to have under the British. And this community accounts for 64% of the state's population, and they are largely found in the Imphal Valley, which just accounts for 10% of Manipur's land area. There is a religious angle as well here. It's not just the ethnic angle. There is a communal angle involved as well. Meiteis, majority of them are Hindus. And there are few Meitei Muslims as well. Alright? Majority Meiteis are Hindus, but some of them are Muslims as well. Now, if you look at the hill regions, the hill districts that surround the Imphal Valley, this is where you find the two major hill-dwelling tribes of Manipur, that is the Nagas, the subgroup of Nagas who are linked with the major Naga clan that you find in Nagaland and in other parts of the region. And along with Nagas, you also find the Kukis, who are linked with other groups in Mizoram. And they also have connections with groups like Chins and Zomis of Manipur. The Zomis and Chins, who are actually from Myanmar, from the neighboring country of Myanmar, they share these close connections with the Kuki tribe in Manipur and Mizoram. So Kukis dominate the hill districts over here, the Kuki Zomis and Kuki Chins, and you also find Nagas, especially in the northern districts over here. These tribal communities are largely Christians. Kukis and as well as Nagas are largely Christian tribal communities, whereas Meiteis are largely Hindus, but you find Meitei Muslims as well. So along with this ethnic angle, there is a religious communal angle as well in this divide, in this social divide. Now what happened was, after Manipur merged with India, the Nagas and Kukis, which were the hill-dwelling tribes, the Nagas and the Kukis, they were accorded with the scheduled tribe status. ST status was given to them. This was denied to Meiteis as they were the dominant class. So this marks the core divide between these communities. The social divide you see in Manipur, the clashes that you are witnessing today, is a direct result of this divide between these communities. The dominant Meiteis, mainly found in the Imphal Valley region, and the Kukis and Nagas, the tribal communities, found in the hill districts. So post-independence, Nagas and Kukis were given scheduled tribe status, which was denied to the Meiteis. These hill areas were even given special provisions under the Indian Constitution, under Article 371C. The governor of the state has few special powers with regard to administration of these hill tribal areas. Now, when a community is given a ST tag or a scheduled tribe status, these communities will enjoy a lot of privileges. For example, they will become eligible for reservation with regard to education, government jobs, etc. Even with regard to political representation. And they will also enjoy a host of privileges with regard to government schemes, subsidies, scholarships, etc. But more importantly, if the community has scheduled tribe status, their land would be protected. When these hill tribes are given ST status, there is constitutional protection for their land. So the communities from the valley, let's say from Imphal, they cannot go to hill areas and purchase the land of Kukis and Nagas, because the land belonging to Kukis and Nagas, their ancestral land, which is directly linked with their culture, their identity and language, is protected, and outsiders cannot purchase this property. Whereas Meiteis did not get any of such privileges, and none of this protection was extended to the Meiteis. The Nagas and Kukis, they can come down to the Imphal Valley and purchase property. They can purchase the ancestral land belonging to Meiteis. So this is what set off the divide and the clashes between these communities. The Meiteis opposed the grant of scheduled tribe status to Kukis and Nagas. And this triggered off the clashes between these ethnic groups, which can be traced back to 1950s, 1960s. So this led to some degree of frustration amongst the Meiteis, and it became the prime cause, the root cause for insurgency in Manipur. Several Meitei-based outfits were set up to protect their rights, to protect their interests, and they took up armed violence against the Indian state. Parallelly, we saw other insurgent movements rise in Nagaland and in Mizoram. For example, Naga insurgency had been going on from 1940s, 1950s itself. The Nagas of Manipur, in the hill areas of Manipur, they get the support of Naga insurgents from Nagaland. Naga insurgent groups like NNC, the Naga National Council, and later the NSCN, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. These Naga insurgent groups have extended armed support to the Naga tribes which are found in the hill areas of Manipur. So they had the backing of these insurgents. Similarly, the Kukis had their own movement, the Kuki land movement, which was an armed insurgent movement seen in Mizoram and Manipur. So the hill-dwelling Kukis of Manipur, they had the support of an armed insurgent group. All the Kuki extremist groups in Mizoram, along the Manipur-Mizoram border, they would be supporting the Kukis in Manipur. So this threatened the interests, the safety, security, and the identity of the Meiteis. Several issues came up later as well. Even in the last 20 years, Naga rebels, for example, have created problems for the Meiteis. If you look at the map again, you will notice that there are some key highways that pass through Nagaland and enters into Manipur. These critical national highways are the only link for Manipur to connect with the rest of India. But Naga rebels, whenever they wanted to retaliate against the Meiteis, or whenever they wanted to highlight the Naga cause to bring the attention of the government of India, they would block out these critical highways. Naga insurgent groups like NSCN, they would block these critical national highways, thus crippling the economy of Manipur. The Imphal Valley especially would suffer. There would be a shortage of essential items and there would be an inflation in all essential commodities, including medicines, food items, and even fuel. Naga insurgents would even collect extortion. They would extort the trucks that would carry goods into Manipur through these highways. So this blockade has hurt Manipur, especially the Meiteis, which are the dominant community. The other issue here is ILP, the inner line permit issue. In Nagaland, in Mizoram, there is this permit system called ILP or inner line permit, which you can trace back to British era. It's a colonial era policy of restricting the movement of outsiders in these restricted areas. The British had implemented the ILP system to protect their resources, to prevent Indians from other parts of the country from accessing the resources of Northeast India. But post-independence, we continued the ILP system in places like Nagaland, Mizoram, etc., even in parts of Assam and Meghalaya, to protect the tribal rights, to protect tribal land, resources, their language, their culture. ILP was implemented in all these neighboring areas. But this was never provided for Manipur. The Meiteis also wanted a ILP system. For many years, they kept demanding an inner line permit so that the movement and entry of outsiders into Manipur can be restricted in order to protect the culture and identity of the Meiteis. This was also a flashpoint between the Meiteis and the other tribes such as Nagas. Recently, the Manipur Assembly has extended ILP to the state of Manipur as well. Now, inner line permit has been extended into Manipur to protect the Meitei identity and the Meitei resources. So this has been a long-standing dispute and a conflict. The origins go back to colonial days. You can see the root causes emerging in 1940s, 1950s, which gave birth to this violent insurgency starting from 1960s. So essentially, the ethnic divide between Meiteis on one side and Nagas and Kukis on the other side is what led few extremist Meiteis to form their own armed insurgent groups. Back in 1960s, two notorious Meitei insurgent groups were formed, the UNLF and the PLA, the United National Liberation Front and the People's Liberation Army of Manipur. These armed insurgent groups, they represented the Meitei cause. They sought to protect Meitei rights, Meitei land and their culture from being targeted by other tribal groups, the rival ethnic groups, such as the Kuki armed groups and the Naga insurgents. So throughout 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, for almost 3 decades, Manipur was devastated by large-scale violence between these various insurgent outfits. Since then, Meiteis have one long-standing demand. Even they have demanded ST status, scheduled tribe status. Their argument is that Meiteis are under threat in the Imphal Valley. Even though they are the majority group in terms of numbers, they say that prior to merger with India, they were treated as a tribe under the British. So since then, they have demanded scheduled tribe status to enjoy the special privileges, mainly to protect their ancestral land, their culture and their language. But the Kuki armed groups and the Naga groups of Manipur, backed with their insurgent groups, they oppose this. They oppose the grant of ST status to Meiteis because Meiteis are in majority. They say, why do Meiteis need reservation? Why do they need the special privileges? Because they are in majority, they are the majority group. So that is the flashpoint here between these ethnic groups. So this insurgency, which was raging from 60s to 80s, eventually subsided because of strong security action from the Indian government forces. As the violence escalated in Manipur in 1960s, AFSPA had been extended, the controversial Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Through this, the Indian Army and Assam Rifles, which has a lead role in counter-insurgency operations in northeast India, they were deployed to lead the counter-insurgency operations against all these insurgent outfits. AFSPA would give extraordinary powers to the security forces, including the right to shoot, that is, shoot at sight if required, arrest without warrant, and essentially it would empower the security forces to curb the security threats, considering that Manipur is a vital border state. But AFSPA in itself has led to a separate controversy. It has allegedly led to large-scale human rights violations. And especially in Manipur, there are allegations of large-scale fake killings, fake encounters, rapes, molestations, which apparently allegedly have been committed by Indian forces. So there are separate controversies related to that. But however, the point to understand is that due to the effective security response of the government of India, along with the state government and state police, India managed to bring down the violent insurgency in the last few decades. We have seen a decline in Manipur's insurgency from 1990s, and by early 2010, the scale of violence had actually gone down and Manipur was stabilizing. But the demand from Meiteis for the ST status had always remained. And it is this issue which has reignited the ethnic flashpoints between Meiteis and the Kukis and the Nagas. Around 10 years ago, in 2012-2013, there was a recommendation provided by a committee to the Union Tribal Affairs Ministry for including the Meitei community in the ST list. This recommendation was based on a survey. There was an ethnic survey conducted which justified the provision of ST status to Meiteis as well, even though Meiteis are the majority group. But the government never acted upon this, considering the sensitivity of the issue. The main focus of the Meitei demand here was to protect their land. Just like Nagas and Kukis had protection for their land because of ST status, they wanted their land and identity to be preserved and protected as well. They wanted their culture and language to be protected, along with the special privileges that come with ST reservation. Reservation in education, in jobs, political reservation, etc. But Nagas and Kukis have always strongly opposed this because Meiteis are the majority community. According to Nagas and Kukis, Manipuri language, which is the language of the Meiteis, has already been given constitutional protection under the 8th schedule. It's one of the 8 schedule languages. So they argue, why should Meiteis get even more privileges with ST status? They are already in majority, so what is the threat that they are facing? That is the argument of the Naga and Kuki groups from the hill areas. But Meiteis have always said that Nagas and Kukis, they have been given extraordinary privileges. They also have the support of these extremist insurgent groups, the Naga and Kuki outfits. And as a result, they threaten the integrity, the stability of the state itself. They threaten the integrity, culture and the language and the identity of the Meitei community. This is the argument of the Meiteis. So this has always been a long-standing debate in Manipur. Now recently, in April, just a few weeks back, the High Court of Manipur intervened on this matter. There was a petition filed by a few Meitei groups asking for the ST status to be implemented as per this recommendation that was given 10 years ago. And the Manipur High Court has restarted the process. It has directed the state government to pursue the recommendations to grant reservation to grant ST status to the Meitei community. So this push from the High Court of Manipur to the state government to consider providing ST status to Meiteis triggered the flashpoint. It widened the divide. It immediately saw opposition from the Kuki and Naga groups. And this is what triggered the wave of violence and clashes that you have seen over the last few days. However, analysts and experts also believe that there is another link, there's another angle to all the violence that you're witnessing. The link with organized crime, especially drug production and drug trafficking. As I told you earlier, along the India-Myanmar border, organized crime is a serious threat. Organized crime such as arms trafficking, drugs trafficking, is a serious security threat because it is directly linked with insurgency. The insurgents operating here in northeast India and in Myanmar, they all engage in organized criminal activities. There is a symbiotic relationship between them. In Myanmar, you have the Golden Triangle region that stretches across Thailand and Laos as well. This Golden Triangle, consisting of Myanmar, Thailand and Laos, is seen as a global hub of narcotics production. And several northeast insurgents and outfits, they have links in the Golden Triangle and they are engaged in drug production and drug trafficking. Several Kuki Chin outfits, Kuki Zomi outfits that are present in India and have links across the border in Myanmar, they do engage in drug cultivation and drug trafficking along the Manipur-Myanmar border. And recently in the month of March, the Manipur state government acted against some of these illegal settlers from Myanmar who are linked with the Kukis of Manipur. Zomi and Chin groups from Myanmar, they have fled Myanmar, they have largely settled in India as refugees, as Myanmar is going through a major political crisis. As Myanmar's military has taken over, there is a state of emergency and large-scale human rights violations are taking place where groups like Chins are being targeted by the military junta. So Chins and Zomis, they flee across the border, they have links with the Kukis and they've settled in parts of Manipur and Mizoram. They're often seen as illegal settlers and some of them have connections with organized criminal cartels, drug cartels, and they're involved in drug production and drug trafficking. So the state government recently acted against them. These illegal settlers were evicted in March and some of the poppy fields were cleared and burnt by the state government. So as soon as this action was taken, the first wave of protests and violence was witnessed as this enraged the Kuki community, which has a vested interest in encouraging the drug production and drug trafficking here. See, it's not just one community. There are several other communities as well in the northeast which are closely linked with organized crime and there are linkages with insurgency as well. So as soon as the state government acted against the illegal settlers and the drug production here in the border areas, there was a wave of protests in March which led to initial rounds of violence. Following this, the Manipur state government withdrew from the suspension of operations agreement that had been signed earlier with the Kuki insurgent outfits. With two Kuki extremist groups, suspension of operations agreement had been signed. That was many years ago when a ceasefire was established to halt the violence in Manipur. The state government had entered into this ceasefire agreement with Kuki extremists by signing the suspension of operations agreement. But as the violence escalated after this action against drug trafficking, the state government suspended the ceasefire. It withdrew from the suspension of operations agreement, which further enraged the Kuki community. And now parallelly, the Meiteis who are demanding ST status, they had approached the High Court and the Manipur High Court has instructed the state government to take a look at the demand for ST status for the Meiteis and to start the process. So this was immediately opposed by Kuki groups. It was backed by the Naga groups as well, all the tribal communities here, as they oppose ST status to the Meiteis. So this has led to violent clashes between the groups and the violence has very quickly escalated, leading to several deaths and injuries. Now this is a very, very serious development as far as India's internal security is concerned. Because as you saw, these developments are directly linked with the past history of insurgency and violence. That is something India cannot afford because due to effective security operations, due to better development, due to socio-economic progress, we had managed to bring down the violence in the last 20-30 years. So we can't go back to a situation where these fresh clashes and divides which have opened up will further reignite insurgency. Right? There are Meitei groups like UNLF, PLA, the remnants which are still active. Naga insurgency is still active. Kuki groups also are reportedly still active. And they are linked with elements on the other side of the border in Myanmar. They get some local support. They are involved in organized criminal activities. And reportedly, China also is involved in backing some of the Northeast insurgent outfits as part of its covert war against India. So given all these threats, it's very, very important to contain the situation as soon as possible and ensure that the social harmony is brought back in Manipur. The blame does not lie with just one community here. This is a long-standing ethnic problem and it requires a very careful, delicate intervention from the government of India. So as of now, to deal with the violence, there are very strict orders given to the security forces. The army, Assam rifles have been deployed and shoot-at-sight orders can be issued in extraordinary circumstances under the special powers of AFSPA. But this response alone will not help India. This could lead to even more fatalities, casualties, and it could actually create more resentment against the Indian state. Because all these insurgent movements we were talking about, the Naga insurgency, the Kuki land movement, and the Meitei insurgency, they were all separatist movements. So we can't afford to breed further resentment. So the issue has to be handled very delicately by the Home Ministry, by the security forces, and by the state government. So this is what you need to understand from this important topic. And let's wait and watch for further developments. Because it is still a developing story. Let's reconnect on this topic again if there is any major development. But for now, this understanding should be more than enough to answer any question in prelims and as well as in mains. So that is it from my side. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.